Continuamos y comenzamos el día.
Let us continue and begin the interactive dialogue with the Special Rapporteur on the implications for human rights of the environmentally sound management and disposal of hazardous substances and wastes. The list of speakers will close in 15 minutes, and it is my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Marcos Orellana, who is warmly welcomed.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, President. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues. In the north of the plurinational state of Bolivia, the main source of proteins for the members of the indigenous people Eseja is fish from the Beni River. A recent study shows that women of childbearing age among that people have a body load of mercury, which is extremely high. That people is not involved in extracting gold or industrial activities, and its only exposure to mercury that is known is through fish. Unfortunately, this is not an isolated case. It is replicated in other countries of the Amazon basin, in West Africa, in Southeast Asia, and in other localities. We see a global contamination problem. The thematic report before the Council today covers the damage and risks to human rights from the use of mercury in the extraction of gold on a small scale. The report examines human rights violations that result from this, including structural racism suffered by the indigenous peoples and environmental injustices arising from the use of mercury in gold extraction. In most of the localities where mercury is used in gold extraction on a small scale, the human rights of the miners, their families and their communities are increasingly threatened by mercury contamination. It is estimated that over 15 million persons are involved in this type of extraction, including thousands of children. The vast majority of miners live in poverty and lack information regarding the severe risks arising from mercury. This mining is often illegal and associated with trafficking, slavery, sexual exploitation, and violence. These human rights violations undermine states' fulfillment of the Sustainable Development Goals when they seek to end poverty and hunger, guarantee healthy lives, clean water, decent work, sustainable consumption, and protect and preserve the lands, the forests, and the water. The use of mercury for small-scale gold extraction is the main source of mercury pollution globally. The mercury trade is driven by the insatiable demand for gold on the financial and jewellery markets of the wealthy countries. Refineries in industrialized countries which purchase gold lack adequate due diligence mechanisms to address the human rights abuses associated with mercury and small-scale gold mining. Mercury is a highly toxic liquid metal. When it is heated to extract gold, it evaporates and contaminates the water, the air and the atmosphere. The mining residue contaminates the soil and the rivers. This metal is bioaccumulated at dangerous levels in the food chain, in particular poisoning those whose diet is based on fish, such as the fishing communities in small island states, thousands of kilometers from the pollution sources. Mercury is, moreover, a persistent metal, generating contamination over decades and centuries, and thus affecting future generations. Inhalation of mercury vapor and consumption of mercury-contaminated fish can lead to severe neurological and behavioural disorders, as well as permanent damage to the kidneys and the heart and disabilities. The health impact is particularly severe for pregnant women. Mercury crosses the placenta and increases the risk that the fetus would suffer malformations and a reduced IQ. There is no doubt that mercury exposure is an attack on personal integrity and a threat to the right to a clean, healthy and sustainable environment. The indigenous peoples are particularly affected by the destruction and pollution of their lands, by deforestation, loss of biodiversity and contamination of food sources. This situation deprives them of their means of subsistence. It harms their autonomy and self-determination and fundamentally affects their traditional culture. The lack of effective protection and of reparations for the damage caused makes evident the environmental injustice that is being carried out against the indigenous peoples. The Minamata Convention on Mercury is the most recent convention in the family of multilateral environmental agreements. It takes its name from the small Japanese fishing village that suffered devastating impact from mercury pollution. It is a robust and comprehensive agreement which seeks to protect human health and the environment from mercury emissions and dumping of mercury compounds. It covers in comprehensive manner the issue of mercury through regulating its trade, gradual elimination of products and processes involving mercury, and the reduction of industrial emissions, amongst other provisions. It also establishes that the parties which carry out a large amount of small-scale gold mining must present a national plan of action every 3 years on the progress made. This all represents steps forward, and yet the Convention has various gaps which limit its effectiveness in reducing and eliminating the use of mercury in small-scale gold mining. In particular, the Convention authorises the trade in mercury and its use in that type of mining. That has allowed the persistence of these practices, and the Convention sets no end date for completion of the gradual elimination of mercury from small-scale gold mining. Thus, mercury emissions arising from small-scale gold extraction have been increasing, and that leads to a grave impact on the rights of the miners living in poverty, indigenous peoples, women, children, and other vulnerable persons, groups, and peoples throughout the world. In order more effectively to combat human rights violations connected with this, states and the Convention must inter alia prohibit the use and the sale of mercury for small-scale mining. A number of states are already addressing this. President, we are seeing before us an environmental crime which requires that every effort be made to ensure the right of all to a healthy and sustainable environment. The global prohibition on the use and trade in mercury in small-scale gold mining would not, by itself, end the problem addressed in the thematic report, but it is a crucial measure to strengthen other elements of the Minamata Convention and make them more effective. Hence, the Convention could achieve its full potential and truly protect human health and the environment from the damaging effects of mercury. President, distinguished delegates, thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to your comments and your questions. Thank you.
El tiempo que tengo también quisiera.
I would also like to present the reports of the country visit that I made last year. And I will now switch to English in order to speak of the visit to Mauritius.
Would like to sincerely thank the